2014 through present day GMC Denali AC condenser / transmission cooler replacement. I'm Brian Essa from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you step by step through the process of changing those out. I'm going to be using a factory AC Delco condenser / transmission cooler. I will link up all the parts I use in the description of the video. The first thing you want to do is recover the Freon from the AC system. If you don't have access to a Freon recovery machine like this, I recommend you drive it down to a shop, have them recover. After the repair, you can have them install the Freon back in the vehicle. The whole front fascia of the vehicle is coming off, so we're going to start by removing this plastic covers here just by popping these clips out. And I use a little clip tool to remove these. After removing the clips from the top cover, you're going to lift the cover up, and at the front it's kind of pressed in, so you kind of pop it up or pull it up like this, and then you can pull this front plastic cover off and set aside. Once we get this cover removed, we're going to start working on the front grill here. So there's some 10mm bolts. We're going to follow around the grill here, so you're going to follow and remove the 10mm bolts going across. So to speed things up, I'm going to use some power tools. I'm using my Milwaukee M12 hex drive impact driver here. I will also link up all the tools that I'm using in the video in the description. That way, if you see anything you like, you can find those links there. So now that I got the bolts off, I just pulled the grill back a little bit like this. So now we need to get the fasteners and the wheel well skirts removed on both left and right sides. So if you look under here, there's some 10mm bolt. So we'll remove those bolts, and then we'll work our way across the bumper, the front of the bumper from underneath, and remove these 10mm bolts right here on these brackets. And then we'll just keep going across, and we'll remove those, and then we'll go up the other side and remove the clips holding the lining on. So this can be done with the wheels on or off. I started with the wheels on, and then later on I jacked the car up and removed the wheels and made it easier. So I'm unbolting the fender skirts here, following all the way up. There's going to be one 8mm screw right here coming up vertical we also need to get. It attaches the bumper to the fender. We need to remove that. The fender skirts are also going to have a couple of these plastic clips here. You're going to use a panel popping tool and kind of pop these clips off like this. You're going to do that on the left and the right side. Then you can pull the fenders back. Now on the inside of the wheel well here, you're going to grab the bumper here and separate it from the fender. So you're just going to pull straight outwards. Sometimes there's a little plastic clip in there that gets stuck. If you can push it downwards as you pull this out. You don't want to pry on the fender. You just want to push that little clip downwards, and then you can pop the panel out like this. Before we remove the bumper all the way off the vehicle, we need to unplug the electrical connector. It's right here on the top of above the radiator. You're going to pull the little safety tab back here, and then squeeze the tab and separate the electrical connector. The nice thing is there's only one connector here that we need to disconnect to unplug all the lights and stuff that are attached to the bumper. So now the front fascia of the vehicle is mostly free. There's a couple little tabs we need to pull off, push, and then the whole bumper assembly is going to come off. So you may want to have a helper on one side hold the bumper while you go back underneath, and right underneath there's these little tabs right here if you look up. So you're going to press those tabs, and as you press the tabs, your helper can pull the bumper outwards. So there's one tab on the right side and one tab on the left side. If you look at the frame, I'm just to the right of the frame on the driver's side, and it'll be just to the left of the frame on the passenger side. So you're going to press that little tab right there, if you can see right here. So I'm pressing this little tab, and as I press this tab, it unlocks the bumper from the frame of the vehicle. So now that I got those two tabs pressed, I'm going to go back on the other side, and you can pull the bumper cover outwards, the whole fascia of the vehicle. Pull it out towards you and just slowly work it off. And now you can go set it aside in a safe spot. Now with the bumper cover off and laying on the ground, I'll show you some of the fasteners. So here you can see the 8mm going up the side, and then the top bolts are where the top grill went on. And at the very bottom of the grill inlet right here is those two clips that we pushed vertical with the screwdriver to get it off of the final two clips. And then these are the 10mm fasteners that were mounted on the bottom on the metal brackets. Next, we need to remove this plastic piece right here going around the condenser. So there's going to be some 10mm fasteners. You just follow them around and remove the 10mm fasteners. There's about 8 or 9 of them. So you'll follow them around from the left to the right and work your way all the way across. And we're also going to take this electrical connector here, unplug it from down here, and then we're going to flip it up over on top of the radiator, and then we'll just continue to come around and remove the bolts. We're also going to unbolt the hood latch here, And then we'll take the hood latch and cable and the wiring harness here that we unbolted, and we're gonna just flip these. After you get them all unplugged, we're just gonna flip them up like this. So you'll take the hood latch and with the cable still attached, and you just set it inside here like that. Now with my power tool, I'm running around removing the 10mm bolts and looking for anything else that may be connected to it. Once you get the cables unhooked, the electrical connectors unplugged, and a handful of the bolts removed, now you can just kind of pull the whole plastic piece, towards the front of the vehicle. Then you can lift it off like this as a one assembly and set it aside. Now I'm working on removing the headlights assembly. So there's a fastener in the very bottom corner. Then there's a fastener at the top right here that we're going to remove. And then we'll one a little further in. Now that I got the bolts removed for the driver's side headlights, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the passenger side and remove those 3 fasteners. One in the lower corner, and the 2 on the top. So when I went to pull the headlights out, I noticed this bottom horizontal piece here is kind of blocking the headlight from coming out. So we're going to remove that. You're going to need a panel popping tool like this to get a couple of the clips here. So you're going to start at the bottom and kind of just work your way across, popping the clips up from this lower plastic piece down here. There also may be some 10mm bolts coming up vertical on it that you want to remove. Once you get the plastic clips removed and the 10mm bolts holding this plastic piece, this horizontal piece held on, then you can pull it off as one assembly like this and set it aside. Now we can finish removing the headlights. There's also one screw coming from the fender side of the headlight you will need to remove, and then after you remove that one bolt, you can pull the headlight assembly out like this. Once you get it pulled out like this, you can unplug the electrical connectors just by squeezing the little tabs and then pulling the connectors off and then setting aside. So my electrical connector was giving me a bunch of problems and didn't want to come off. So I decided to not press my luck and just leave the headlight connector connected, and I just let it hang off to the side. I used a little bungee cord to hold it. Now on the driver's side, I took off the one bolt holding it from the fender side. After I removed that bolt, then I pulled the headlight assembly off. And like the opposite side, this electrical connector here was not really wanting to come off, so I didn't want to press my luck. So I left the light connected and used a bungee cord and let it hang. Now we're going to get this metal frame portion of it out. We're going to remove the bolt in the center, and then on the side there's going to be a bolt we're going to remove, and down below another bolt, and we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side here. So remove the bolt here. After you get the top bolt removed, then you can go below here and get the lower bolt here removed. Once you get those bolts removed, there's a bolt here in the corner you're going to remove, a bolt right here. Now you'll follow the metal frame down, and then off to the side there's a separate little bolt here. So the same bolts that we took off on the passenger side, we're going to take off on the driver's side. Once you get all those bolts removed, there's going to be 2 more bolts on the bottom of the frame here. So they're coming in like straight on right here. So you're going to remove these 2 bolts. Once you get those 2 last bolts removed, now you can take this whole metal frame here and kind of lift it off. As I was about to pull it off, I noticed the wire loom was attached here, so I need to pop it out right here using a little panel popping tool. Once you get the wiring harness disconnected from the frame here, just push it back towards the engine. And now you can just kind of give the frame a little wiggle and pull it towards the front of the car or pull it towards you. And you're going to do that until it pops free on the driver's side, and then you go over to on the passenger side, and then you go over to the driver's side, and you'll do the same thing. You're going to just give the frame a wiggle and kind of pull it towards you and kind of lift upwards at the same time, and it'll pop free from its mounting. Once you get it wiggled loose, then you can just grab the whole frame, pick it up, and pull it off, and then set it aside. If you were able to have a helper help you wiggle the free on one side while you do the other side, it's a lot easier. I did it all solo, so it can be done. So now that you got this metal frame popped off and removed, the next step is there's this plastic molding around the condenser and the radiator here. You need to pop this up and pop it off. And I just did it by hand by just lifting up on it, and now I can pull the molding off. Now I'm going to remove the upper transmission cooler line going into the condenser / transmission cooler. So I pulled the plastic cover off, and then underneath it is a little horseshoe clip that we need to pick out. I'm using a pick tool. I'm going to pick this little horseshoe clip out. Once you get that clip removed, then you can kind of just wiggle the hose and pull it out of the connector like this. Now on the opposite side, there's another line going in, a transmission cooler line. We're going to pull that clip out and pull this line off also. So you use the pick tool, pick out the horseshoe clip, Once you get the horseshoe clip picked out, then you can pull the line off. So you'll give the line a little wiggle and pop it out. Now that you got the transmission cooler lines removed, we're going to work on getting the AC condenser line out. So on the lower corner on the passenger side is a little bracket, and it has a bolt right here we're going to remove. So we're going to remove that bolt, and that's holding the line. So now once you got that bolt removed, we're going to go underneath and follow the AC lines going in from the back and remove the 13mm nut and pull the lines off. Now we're going to remove the condenser slash cooler from the radiator. There's a little tab we're going to push at the top here, and it's just sitting on a slide at the bottom. So you'll push this tab in and then lift the corner up, and you'll go on the opposite side and you'll push the tab here and lift the condenser upwards, and the condenser will come off. So here I am with one hand pushing the tab with my thumb and then kind of lifting and pulling the condenser upwards. You have to kind of wiggle it to get it to pop out of its little slot. So I did that on one side, then I moved over to the opposite side, and I pushed the little tab with my thumb, lift the condenser up. Now you can pull the condenser out like this. And now we're going to set the condenser off to the side, and we're going to remove all the remaining plastic pieces, and we'll transfer all this stuff over to the new condenser. So we're going to lay them side by side. So there was a lot of debris in the fins of the radiator, so I'm going to try to blow it out and then try to get some of this debris out of the radiator, maybe use a rag and wipe it all out. Now with the two condensers laying side by side, the old and new, I'll take any of the plastic moldings or anything that's still on the old condenser and transfer it onto the new condenser. So like I said, I took both of these plastic moldings off of the old one and clipped them onto the new one. The one on the passenger side is a little more difficult. You have to route it through the brackets and stuff here. But so I went ahead and did that and clipped it on. Now I'm going to take the new condenser and line it up with the slots that it pushed out of. So you put it in place, and then you kind of lift it slightly above the little clips, and then you push inwards and downwards at the same time to get the condenser to lock onto the radiator on the little tabs on the radiator. So I kind of did it one side at a time. I did the passenger side first and then went over to the driver's side. Also, as you're doing this, you want to make sure that the little plastic moldings are in the right place and just kind of give them a look. You can kind of see where they go and then make sure they're all clipped in on both the left and right side. After that's done, you can go ahead and start putting the transmission cooler lines back in. So you'll push the lines back into the fittings, and then once the fittings are pushed all the way in, you put the horseshoe clip back in. And then once you got that horseshoe clip back in, you give the lines a really good tug to make sure that they're not going to pop back out. Then you can put the little plastic safety cap back on and push it on until it clips back on. Now we're going to go on the opposite side, reinstall the cooler line, the horseshoe, and then give it a good tug to make sure that it's not going to pop back off. Now we can change out the O-rings and reinstall the AC lines on the back of the condenser. And then there's the little 10mm bolt here that held the little bracket that holds the lines in place. You want to go ahead and install that too. So right here I'm installing the 10mm bolt that held the bracket on. I'm also going to go ahead and install the top molding here, the plastic molding that went on the very top. It just clips on, so you just kind of line it up with the tabs in here. And once you get everything lined up, you kind of just push it downwards until it locks into place. And it has to line up on both the left and the right side with the plastic moldings on the side of the condenser slash cooler. Now that you have the plastic molding reattached, you can take the main metal frame here, and we're going to lift that back into position. Because I still had the headlights hooked up, I needed to get the brackets underneath the wiring harness. So I had a coworker kind of lift the headlights up while I slipped the main support here underneath the wiring harness, and I did that for both the left and right side, and then just lined it up with the original bolt holes. Now that the frame is back in its original position, we can go ahead and starting the fasteners. So I ran all the fasteners in with my little impact tool here, snugging them up with the tool. So I just started at the one corner and just kind of worked my way around the frame. So I put all these bolts in, and then I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Once you get the metal frame installed, then you can go ahead and reinstall the headlights. So you'll just line them up with their original bolt holes, and then you'll start all 4 of the bolts. When installing the headlights, I like to start all 4 of the bolts by hand. So the 2 top bolts first, and then once you get the 2 top bolts started, then you can look around the side here and kind of line it up. and put the side bolt in, and then the lower bolt. Once you get them all started, then you can run them in with the impact tool and snug them all up. So once I got the passenger side done with the metal frame resecured, the headlight remounted, I went ahead and did the same process for the passengers, or for the driver's side. I went ahead and remounted the fasteners for the metal frame. That includes the fasteners at the very top of the metal frame, and then there's 2 fasteners at the very bottom of the metal frame. So there's 2 more 10mm bolts that go down at the bottom here, and then just a little bit over right here. Once you get all that mounted, then you can go ahead and mount the headlight back up. Once you get the headlight resecured and mounted with all the bolts started up, now we can put this horizontal molding back into place. It lays right on top of the bumper. So you're gonna line that up. And once it's back in position, then you can go ahead and put the bolts that went vertical back into the molding here, and then run those in and tighten those up. As you can see, I pretty much use this little M12 impact gun by Milwaukee Tools to do this whole job. If you guys haven't seen this little tool, I recommend you check it out. I will leave a link for it in the description of the video. Once you get those all secured, the next step is going to be to install the this large plastic molding that went around the metal frame. So we'll take this plastic molding and line it back up with all the tabs. So you'll put it back into position, and then once it's in position, then we'll bolt it all up. So once this is back and lined up in its original position, we'll take the wiring harness, and we'll also take the hood latch with the cable and go ahead and route that back into position. So you'll have to kind of clip it onto the little clips here on the top of the core support, and then you route the cable underneath. You want it to route underneath like this, and then once you get it routed into the right position, you can go ahead and line up the hood latch. So when you go to bolt up the latch, I run the bolts in and line up the bolts where they left marks where they used to be tightened up at. So I line those back up and tighten those up. So to kind of recap what I did, I started all the bolts by hand, let them all loose until they were all started. And then I went back over with my impact driver here, and I tightened up all the fasteners. And then once I got all the fasteners for them all the way around the bracket, then I took my time to line up the hood latch with the original marks on the bolts, and then I ran those bolts in and tightened the hood latch up last. Now I'm going to take the wiring harness here and flip it back over and attach everything, the little wire loom holders, attach all that stuff back into the frame of the core support here, and then I'll route it around and plug everything in. Now that I got the wire loom and everything re-secured and mounted, the next step is to put the bumper cover back up. So I'm going to line up the bumper cover. So now I'm going to carefully lift the bumper cover into position. And as I do this, I'm kind of looking over the top. There's those little clips that we have to line up in the just on the bottom of the grill there. So I'm sliding this into the position, and I'm kind of looking over the top, and you can kind of see where those line up. And then I also started a couple of the bolts on the very top of the grill to kind of hold everything in place. So I started a couple bolts on the top here, and then now I can rotate the bumper into position. So with the bumper hooked on top, I run around to the side of the car, and I hook the bumper and the fender together, and then I push the bumper inwards to it clipped into those little clips in the front. And I lined up the fender here, and then just tapped everything into place, pushing everything into place. It takes a little wiggling and kind of shifting to get everything to line up. Now you can go ahead and put the bolts that went across the top of the grill, you can go ahead and line those up. And once you got them all started, you can go ahead and tighten those bolts down. Once you get all those bolts tightened down, you can also go ahead and plug in the wire loom. So now that you got the top of the grill bolted up, you can go ahead and plug the wire connector in for all the lights and stuff, the main gang plug. So push the 2 connectors together, and then the little safety tab, make sure that's all locked in place. Now that you've got that done, you can go back underneath the vehicle and line up all the brackets that held the bottom of the bumper on. So there's a couple vertical ones and then you're going to line up the fenders here, and you're going to bolt those all the way back up, all the 8mm that went up the side here. So you're going to do that for both left and right side. And there's also a couple of those little plastic clips on the bottom that held it on. So when I do these jobs, I start on one side and kind of just work my way from one side until all the way across the car until I get to the other side, tightening up the fasteners and starting the fasteners. So you're going to work your way all the way across, starting up all the bolts and fasteners and tightening them all up. Once again, you can see how valuable having a tool like this Milwaukee M12 hex head impact driver here. You know, it just makes jobs like this extremely efficient. Now that I got all the bottom fasteners secure, I'm going to do all the fender skirt ones. I'm going to get the corner bolt here first. So I'm going to make sure these are all lined up. Then I'll start the 8mm bolt that went vertical right here. I'll tighten that fastener up, and I'll do all the ones on the inside of the skirts, and I'm going to do that for both the left and the right side of the vehicle. After I get that all secured, then I'll put the wheels and tires back on. Then I'll lower the vehicle back down, and then I'll take the big plastic cover that went over the whole condenser and radiator assembly here. I'll put this back into position, and I'll start all the clips and fasteners that held this on. The next step is going to be to charge the AC system back up. Just use the sticker underneath the car for the proper charge. If you had somebody else remove the Freon, take it back to that shop and have them charge up the AC system. You're also going to want to pull the transmission dipstick out and check the fluid level. When you're doing this job, you may lose a few ounces of transmission fluid, so go ahead and double check your transmission fluid level. So I will link up all the parts and tools that I used in this video in the description. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.